On June 7, 2007, the weather began very calm in northeast Wisconsin. However, an ominous threat of severe weather was imminent as the day progressed into the afternoon. The Storm Prediction Center issued a rare high risk for tornadoes at 5:52 a.m. for extreme eastern Minnesota, 3/4 of the UP of Michigan, and the northern 3/4 of Wisconsin. Arriving to the area was an unusually strong and unseasonal upper-level storm system with deep surface low pressure measuring 979 millibars ahead of a cold front that moved east throughout the day. The recipe for destructive weather became imminent, with convective potential increasing all the way up to 2,932 joules per kilogram by 7 p.m. This led the Storm Prediction Center out of Norman, Oklahoma to issue a particularly dangerous situation tornado watch at 2:40 p.m. on June 7th. 80-mile-per-hour winds, hail nearly the size of baseballs, and dangerous tornadoes were expected in northern Wisconsin. And less than 2 hours later, a tornado would finally arrive to Wisconsin's Northwoods. At 4:31 p.m., a funnel cloud falls from the sky and touches down in Shawano County about 2.5 miles east of Mattoon. This tornado would begin moving at a very brisk 51 miles per hour and enter the heavily forested Menominee County, growing to a massive half-mile width, slashing through the dense coniferous forests. Entering Langlade County, this tornado would reach its maximum intensity with 160-mile-per-hour winds, ripping apart more dense forests in its way. Southeast of White Lake, the Bear Paw Outdoor Adventure Center campground found itself in the direct path of this massive tornado. 6 out of 10 buildings on the campground would be destroyed, including some cabins being torn to bits, kayaks blown to smithereens, and even a 3-story inn sustained significant damage. The tornado continued to the northeast, where upon entering Oconto County, this storm would grow to its maximum width of 3/4 of a mile wide. A home belonging to Cheryl Markison near Riverview would be hit by this tornado, destroying her house and barn. Shortly after, a house and bar belonging to Tom O'Neill were under the gun for a direct hit. O'Neill, who knew a violent storm was approaching, ran to his bathroom and took cover in his bathtub. However, O'Neill's bathroom walls were getting torn away before his very eyes, and soon he recalled spinning and spinning as the tornado lifted and tossed him about 100 to 120 feet away from his home. The Riverview Fire Department would become the next target of the tornado, where the roof would be torn off and a fire truck would be flipped over by the tornado's winds. Once the storm reached the Oconto-Marinette County border, the tornado had dissipated after carving a 40-mile-long path through northeast Wisconsin. Thankfully, nobody had lost their life from this tornado. Tom O'Neill, who had been tossed nearly 120 feet from the tornadic winds near Riverview, only suffered minor bruises. This Quad County tornado would be rated an EF3 on the recently adopted Enhanced Fujita scale that began being used to rate tornadoes on February 1, 2007. Property damage and timber destruction by this single 40-mile-long tornado path would amount to nearly $15 million, or over $22 million adjusted for inflation and counting today. A total of 5 tornadoes would touch down on this June 7, 2007 outbreak, a relatively and thankfully low amount considering the very high severe weather risk and PDS tornado watch being issued by the Storm Prediction Center. Significantly, these storms would almost set a Wisconsin state record for the largest hailstone dropped from the sky. This June 7th outbreak, which included a 45% chance for destructive hail, dropped a hailstone in Port Edwards, measuring a whopping 5.5 inches in diameter. Had this hailstone been at least 0.2 of an inch or more larger, it would have broken the Wisconsin state record for largest hailstone, which belonged to one that fell in nearby Wausau back in 1925. Now, relatively, this June 7, 2007 Northwoods tornado may not seem as significant when paired up against other historic Wisconsin tornadoes. But this tornado sure left its mark. What you are looking at might be one of the most distinctive and striking tornado scars ever seen from satellite imagery. It's almost a work of art. That is, if the canvas was 14,000 acres of leveled trees and tens of millions of dollars of property damage. Yet the visibility of this particular tornado scar from upwards of nearly 500 miles above the Earth is so staggering. Even 10 years later in 2017, after the tornado had ravaged through this neck of the woods, it still can be seen clearly from space. The expanse of this tornado's width was quite astonishing considering its clearing of trees like a mass deforestation project. And if you think that sounds like a joke, take a look at this deforestation map on Global Forest Watch's website after the tornado went through. In Menominee County, the percentage of forest cover lost between 2006 to 2007, right after the tornado occurred, had increased by 464%. But even that figure pales in comparison to Oconto County, whose rate of deforestation between 2006 and 2007 after the tornado had increased by over 1,100%. Considering the average forest loss between 2002 and 2006 in Oconto County was about 278 acres per year, this tornado accounted for approximately 2,805 acres of forest destruction alone in 2007. For the sake of comparison, take a look at the tornado tracks from the Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, Alabama tornadoes. Withstanding the complete loss of life and devastation from these horrible Alabama storms, the prominence of Wisconsin's tornado scar is just as clearly visible from above. Had this tornado scar been etched a little over 30 miles to its southwest instead, this EF3 would have made a direct impact on Wausau, the largest nearby community containing a metro population of nearly 140,000 people. Even though a substantial amount of damage occurred, it is fortunate that this tornado happened to blow through a very rural portion of Wisconsin instead. But out of curiosity, how does this tornado scar happen to look today? Time to take a road trip and find out. Alrighty, so we are in the tornado path. It appears that trees are starting to really grow in here right now. We got some, looks like some pretty young birch, maybe some aspen trees in here. We got some, looks like some red pine. And I know there's also some white pines here. So it appears to really start, everything seems to be kind of growing again, which is really a good thing at the end of the day. I mean, these tornado scars are definitely kind of a blight when it comes to ecosystems. But yeah, as you can see way in the distance, that is the edge of where the tornado came through, which is considerably far away. And we're right smack dab in the middle of where all this destruction happened. So if we came here back in 2007, 2008, maybe even 09, I mean, it would just be probably trees that would be about the size of this pine right here, or maybe even smaller, if they even started growing by then. But yeah, this is unbelievable how big this tornado was. This is crazy. So we're gonna make a bold move here, and we're gonna keep going down this road. And it looks like we're nearing the edge of where the tornado's extent was. And it's just absolutely crazy to think that we are currently in what was a former rotating violent column of air. I mean, take a look at this. These trees somehow were spared. You got some pretty tall red pines going on. Yeah, this is basically southern extent where the tornado was able to really do some damage. And as you notice, you know, the taller trees get thicker, so it definitely tapered off here. And boy, I would not recommend driving this road without four-wheel drive. All right, continuing on. Despite the high risk issued for tornadoes on June 7, 2007, the storms that ensued spared all human life. Had this tornado occurred on June 8th, a Friday where the Bear Paw Outdoor Adventure Park would have likely had hundreds of visitors for the upcoming weekend, the outcome would have likely been very grim, echoing another horrific June 7th through June 8th Wisconsin tornadic event like the Barneveld tornado. Aside from potential loss of life, this June 7th EF3 also missed out on sweeping away one of the most serene and endangered natural areas in Wisconsin, the Cathedral Pines Natural Area. This forest contains among the last of Wisconsin's oldest and largest coniferous trees that were miraculously spared from being felled in the early 1900s to supply the state's prosperous timber industry. Lucy Rumsey Holt, wife of Holt Lumber Company president William Holt, encouraged her husband to preserve this forest from being harvested for timber by his logging business. Mrs. Holt had spent numerous hours with her children in this patch of forest, reading Bible verses and teaching prayers to them. With the rustling winds reminding Holt of a cathedral, as well as these towering trees feeling like a very sacred place, she chose to call this forest Cathedral Woods. William Holt, who respected Lucy's wishes, preserved these massive white and red pine trees, and the forest was never logged for timber. After Lucy passed away in 1939, William dedicated this forest to his wife, officially naming these trees Cathedral Woods. In 1968, the Holt family would sell these woods to the U.S. Forest Service, allowing the public to experience their beauty. This tornado could have wiped out this incredible forest if its trajectory were pushed to the north. As scarce as old-growth forests already are in the United States, and this particular one containing trees nearing 300 years old or more, Wisconsin thankfully missed out on losing over a century of protective measures placed on these gigantic trees from none other than Mother Nature herself. They say scars tell a story, and this tornado scar's story will only continue to be witnessed in person until these new growth trees in Wisconsin's Northwoods return to previous heights and restore the landscape from up close and miles above. This June 7th, 2007 tornado would also be the last time northern Wisconsin would be issued a high-risk threat of severe weather by the Storm Prediction Center, at least for now. And if you wish to visit a very prominent tornado scar in person, there's still some time, but you might want to plan your visit before it's gone for good. Thank you all for watching this video. My first announcement is that I have set up an email if you wish to contact me directly with video suggestions or other cool weather and geography stuff. You can send an email to theworldstormtv@gmail.com, all lowercase, no capital letters. That's theworldstormtv@gmail.com. Secondly, my next video may require a bit of time to make. So if there's no video between now and early June, that's going to be the reason why. But I have a lot of ideas ahead and some great suggestions from some of you. Thanks for watching, and make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to WorldStorm.